Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about the different categories of an art, it is part of the lesson 2 of the art appreciation subject. So in this video, first we're going to talk about the categories of an art, and we also going to talk about the purpose of the arts, and especially the anatomy of an artwork, and the different factors that affect the artist and his works. So let's start with different categories of the art. So we have four categorization under the categories of an art. So let's start with this anthropological and thematic. But before that, these artworks are categorized according to different criteria. And most of them na ibibigay ko is dependent on the author and the critic criteria only. So, author of the different references may refer to the evolution of time in categorizing an artwork. It could be. But in this categorization that I will give to you and I discuss to you is only dependent on the author, references natin, and the critics during the times. Okay, so let's start with anthropological. So when we say anthropological category of an artworks or arts, it is defined, or the artworks are defined and categorized, which is according to the culture or the country they originated. From the term anthropology, ano po, so we are going to kumbaga, we are more specific pagdating sa kung saan nagmula yung isang artwork. So, under the anthropological category, we have three classification. So, first, we have the prehistoric artworks. So, it was highlighted, or it is highlighted the archaeological value more than its aesthetic value. So, dito, we are more focusing on the archaeological value or the importance of this specific artwork, kung gaano na ba siya katagal, something like that. And at the same time, um, we are more valuing the archaeological function of it rather than aesthetic value of its artwork. So like for example, let's say the cave paintings. Ano po? So kung gaano kahalaga na nagpapakita itong cave paintings na ito na kung ano ang nangyari during the ancestors times natin. Ano po? And then pangalawang classification of the anthropological category is the pre-communal and tribal artwork. So it is artworks which are the creative creation of indigenous and tribal communities, which most of the time are elementary in form and structure. So in this kind of classification, we are more specific naman pagdating sa indigenous and tribal communities. So, involved na dito yung mga culture na pinapakita po sa bawat artworks na ginagawa ng mga tribals group natin. So, like for example, here in the Philippines, those indigenous art na makikita po natin or until now naman is preserved by the, let's say, mga taga-Benguet, ano po, yung mga Visayan culture natin, which is until now, they are preserving this kind of arts that will serve as the symbol, or it symbolizes our culture from the very beginning of our history, something like that. And then the last classification is, we so-called it Asian, Western, Mediterranean, French, and Italian. So it talks about the regional origination of a particular artwork, something like that. So it is categories refers to the particular regional setting or country they originated. So like for example, if the artwork came from Asia, we usually called it Asian artwork. So if it is a kind of Italian artwork, we call arts rather, we call it Italian artwork, something like that. Ano po? And then another categories, we also have the thematic. So the thematic naman is, dito na po papasok, or in this kind of category, you consider the philosophy, the principle, the medium and technique that the artist employed in categorizing their works in this book. So, like for example, ano po? So, in this kind of thematic, it talks about the theme. Ano po? It talks about the main topic or the subject of the artwork that the artist going to do. So, dito, we classify them, the theme or the thematic as expressionist, baroque, realist, surrealist, and then some other thematic. So, when we say expressionist, this is a theory or practice in art of seeking to depict the subjective emotions and responses that objects and events arose in the artist. So sometimes they call it that the main subject of being an expressionist artist or expressionist artwork is more on the emotions and expression of the artist is employed on his artwork, something like that. And then when we say Baroque naman, it is having the characteristic of style of artistic expression prevalent, especially in the 17th century, that is marked generally by use of the complex forms, bold ornamentations, and juxtaposition of the contrasting element, often conveying a sense of the drama, movement, and tension. And another classification, we also have the realist. So realist, we adhere to style of realism by representing things in a way faithful to nature, to a real or a real life situation. So sometimes of the realist represents a culture, ano po, and way of how the people during that time or during the ancestors' time conveying their faith for a specific religious belief, something like that. Or let's say sa nature. And then even the realistic images of the real one artwork. And we also have the surrealist. Sa surrealist naman, it is a practice of producing fantastic or incongruous imagery or effects in art, literature, film, and theater by means of unnatural or irrational juxtapositions and combinations. So we also have the Greek, Roman, medieval, Byzantine, Renaissance, modern, and postmodern. So those are the kinds of thematic na ini-employ po pagdating dito sa category na to. We also have the so-called category of an artwork according to critic and patron. So in this type of category, according to the author, it is a category does the categorization of this of the artwork based on this is marginalized or discriminated. Some other artworks are one patronized by the society because it was not critics or pasok sa panlasa po ng mga kritikong tao during that time. Even the taste of the patrons, pag hindi nila nakagustuhan yung artwork ng isang tao, is naliligwak parang or parang kumbaga hindi siya tinatanggap sa society. Kahit gaano kaganda yung artwork mo, sometimes in this kind of categorization, hindi po siya pumapatok sa masa, something like that. So dito, under the critic and patron, we classify the so-called high art and low art. So this is the former powerful and the latter is culture of the less powerful. So, meaning to say, they categorize the artwork, the so-called high art and low art. Kapag halimbawa pong hindi ka naman kilalang artist, something like that. Kahit na sobrang ganda nung kino-convey na message, so dito parang hindi pinapansin yung yung meaning ng artwork mo o nung expression na pinapakita mo dun sa artwork mo. Kapag halimbawa, mas tinitingnan dito if you are a powerful person, something like that. And sometimes, if you are an apprentice or a part of the family of the emperor, something like that. Kasi during that time, uso po yung nagiging subject ng mga artists is yung mga patron, yung mga pharaoh, yung mga kings, queen, yung mga emperor, mga empress. Sila yung madalas na subject during the medieval time, Byzantine time, something like that. But, kapag halimbawa kinonsider nila or kinategorize na nilang artwork mo as high art or low art, dito mo ma-recognize or ma-determine if you are part of the powerful people. Ano po? And then the less culture you have the less powerful pagdating sa mundo ng arts. So, nagkaroon na lang naman kasi ng puwang ang meaning or expressions of the art or kumbaga mas lalong nag-evolve ang image ng pagkakaroon ng pag-accept and appreciation of the arts during Renaissance time. We also have the so-called art and popular culture. It is the culture of the elite has aesthetical appeal, while the culture of the masses is popular and less appealing. So dito, we considered also the art and popular culture na kadalasan na nagiging subject is more on came from the culture of the elite persons, elite families, the let's say the imperialism form, something like that. Yan lang yung mas tinitingnang kultura during that time. That's why may tinatawag na art and popular culture. We also have the classification of high-priced and low-priced. So dito, kapag ang isang artwork ay gawa po ng sikat na artist, pwedeng presyohan ng mataas. Pero kapag hindi ka naman sikat na artist or hindi ka kinoconsider na kilalang artist during your time, your artwork doesn't have the right to become a high-priced artwork, something like that. So, pwedeng low-priced artwork lang ang ibigay sa'yo or bigyan ka ng mababang benta pagdating sa ganitong klaseng artworks. Ano po? We also have the deconstruction of aesthetic and real value of art. So, dito naman, some group of people kasi and ideologists are convinced that artwork should not be classified and categorized but needed to be revolutionized. So, according to sa previous criteria natin or categorization, according to critic and patron, so doon pa lang makikita nyo na yung discrimination o yung um, pagiging bias ng mga critic and patrons or pharaohs or ng mga elite critics during the time na kinagkakaroon pa lang ng evolution of the arts. So dito sa deconstruction of the aesthetic and real value of arts. So there's some classification that we are going to talk about na instead of looking on the bad side of this kind of artwork, why don't we should try to look for the appealing or the aesthetic value of this kind of artwork. So like for example, we have the communist ideal. So sa communist ideal, they pronounce that all artworks that don't serve the interests of the people are just instrument of the oppression and the slavery of the ruling class, which is yung communist ideals kasi, balik tayo dun sa tinatawag na high art and low art or the art and popular culture. So as you can see dun sa definition pa lang, culture of the elite has aesthetic appeal, while the culture of the masses is popular and less appealing. So dito, sa classification ito, is stop using the communist ideas that will discriminate or marginalize others' work just because their culture is not that that is not just high unlike the other cultures in the specific area, ano po, something like that. Na porke pala, ikaw ay parte ng isang prominenteng pamilya, something like that, ay yun lang yung artwork mo, may karapatan, ano po. Why don't we try to look the real value of this specific artwork, something like that. And we also have the so-called graffiti artist. So, sa dati kasi, ang pagiging graffiti artist, actually, sa Philippines, meron tayong batas dito which is vandalism, ano po. Pero sa vandalism naman kasi, kapag halimbawa yung isang property is hindi naman siya authorized to create some postings or images, the owner or this property owner can file a case against you if you conducted a paintings or let's say not authorized artworks doon. Ano po? So, pwedeng ganun. Pero si graffiti artist kasi sabi nila, dumilang daw nga siya sa pader, something like that. Pero, this kind of artwork can be used for, let's say, a movement that will open some ideals in our society today. So, like for example, drug addiction. We can create or convey a message to the youth to avoid this kind of practices. Ano po? Through the art. Something like that. So, may purpose kasi yung pagiging graffiti artist. Hindi lang siya basta vandalism na tinuturing ng iba. something like that. We also have the mass production of indigenous sculpture, and designs reduce their cultural works into commodity. So this is a kind of why don't we just promote um, the indigenous art, something like that, to create unique designs that will represent our culture. Ano po, something. And then we also have the Dada movement. So Dada movement, it argues that aesthetic is not real and insignificant. And while postmodern artists classify and declassify the artwork as easy as the changes of the tides every day. And also the freestyle rap competition, which is the redefines of Filipino Makata into modern, highly westernized Makatas. If you're going to look the each lyrics, or let's say each stanzas of the very of every rather every Filipino rap stylist or freestylist natin, some of their words are hitting below the belt. So, kumbaga, hindi siya makataong dinggin, but the reality in their words is in it. Ano po? So, nagpapakita siya ng katotohanan pagdating sa mga uh, it is different with the so-called real talk. Kasi sometimes, some other people giving their real talk terms, real talk words, something like that. But the real talk is unjustifiable siya para masabi natin na pwede siyang tanggapin ng isang tao. Kasi napaka-unreasonable sometimes na mga nagbibigay ng tinatawag na real talk. Unreasonable na kumbaga may masabi na lang, something like that. So another is we also have the anatomy of an artwork. So anatomy of an artwork is meron tayong tinatawag na we have here 7 anatomy. So sa 7 anatomy, first we are going to look syempre dun sa tinatawag nating artwork na. Sa artwork, when we say artwork, it is considered as one of the following criteria are met. So these are the criteria that the artwork should met. So we first, the authenticity. It should not be copied, or we can revise, ano po, but it should be a legitimate artwork. Aesthetic quality, and there is a mastery of skill na makikita natin doon sa specific artwork. And then, we also have the subject. Sa subject naman, dito na yung tinatawag natin na, actually, sa subject, according to our reference, generally the subject of an artwork is anything under the sun. And most especially, it talks about or it deals with our imaginations. Subject can be part of our imagination and creativity. A subject would be imaginary like a unicorn or a mermaid, something like that. Or as real as EDSA people power, something like that. So we have 3 way of representation of a subject. We have the abstract, distorted, and realist. Sa abstract, it is a kind of non-representational artwork that you can see an image, but it does not convey a direct meaning kung ano mismo nung nilalaman ng isang artwork. Pangalawa, we also have the distorted. So it is a kind of process that you are changing the original appearance of a specific artwork, and not only the appearance but also the shape ano po, into the real one. So parang like for example, image ng isang tao, you will transform it into cartoonic artwork, ano po, something like that. And then the realist naman is you are conveying your artwork, or you're representing your artwork to represent a realistic image. Ano po? So those are the 3 way of representation of an artwork. But it doesn't mean na anything that you have in your culture, in you have your personality, you can use as your subject. Sometimes kasi, there is always ito kasi hindi naman siya sometimes, there's always a limitation pagdating sa artwork. So sometimes, this limitation set by their respective schools, culture, or government regulations and restrictions, or even the religious belief is pasok din po dito. So, sometimes, nalilimitahan yung paggawa natin ng isang specific artwork, ano po, just because of this belief, just because of these restrictions na kailangan nating sundin. Ano po? And we also have the so-called artist. So when we say artist, it is an individual trained or with the mastery of a specific or multiple artistic capacity. So when we say artist, ito yung mga tao na individual trained or the artisans na tinatawag. And we also have the emotion or ideas to be expressed in anatomy of an artwork. So the emotion or ideas expressed by an artwork could be exaggerated, limited, or it could be imaginary or for realist to real and grounded for experience. So this kind of category is one of the main reason of why some artist is doing their artwork according to their concept, their own concept. Ano po? So, dito they invade. Sometimes kasi bago gumawa ng isang artwork, ang isang artist is naghahanap muna siya ng nung tinatawag nating inspirations. Like for example, even the songwriter, before he create a lyrics to his song that he wanted, is nagkakandak muna siya ng some relaxation or inspirational things that he can use to create this such kind of masterpiece na gusto niya. And we also have the medium and technique under the artwork or the anatomy and an artwork. The three major category of an artwork is we have the visual arts or artworks, practical artworks, performing artworks. So when we say visual artworks, it includes the paintings, the frescoes, the mosaics, prints, and photograph. As you can see, anything that is visualized can be part or they can be considered as visual arts. But in this kind of on a flat surface kapag visual artwork. Pero, some ideologies, they consider that sculpture and architecture is also part of visual artwork. Kasi we visualize this one. But for now, or as of the modern times, they considered it already as practical artworks kasi it includes the manpower or includes practices before it became a masterpiece, something like that. And we have also the performing artworks. Sa performing artworks, it talks about the literature, music, dance, and theater plays. Those are the performing artworks na tinatawag natin. And we also have the so-called purpose of an artwork. This is one of the very important element pagdating po sa pag-consider natin ng artwork. Actually, there's a lot of purposes that will can engage in a specific artwork will depends upon the artist interest. Ano yung pinakang purpose nila? Why they are doing this kind of artwork? Something like that. Ano po? So it will depends upon the but this for categorization or classification of the purpose is the generally accepted. Ano po? So una, we have they consider the artwork as recording appearance. So, in our history, we uses the cave paintings, the portraits and landscapes, can be an example of the artworks that could record and preserve images of man and nature. Ano po? So, recording appearance, it serves as a symbolism for the next generation of what will happen in our generation, something like that. So it preserve the culture and at the same time, it helped us to determine of what was happened before. Ano po, bago itong panahon na meron tayo. Something like that. And then making the invisible visible. So the best example of it is the saints of the Roman Catholic, yung mga santo. We don't have any idea kung ano ba ang itsura ni Jesus Christ, but because of the artworks that na ginagamit natin or nakikita natin ngayon, nag-convey ng physical appearance or possible physical appearance ni Jesus Christ, we have an idea. Ano po? And like for example, uh, the term making the invisible visible, nagkakaroon ng images ang isang bagay na hindi naman talaga natin nakikita sometimes or hindi talaga nag-exist sa paningin natin during our lifetime. So like for example, through our imaginations, We are making the invisible things into a visible one. We are giving life to those things na hindi naman talaga nag-exist. Like, for example, unicorn. May makakapagsabi ba if the unicorn is already existing in our world? Or it is just part of the imagination of the cartoonist or the animationist? Ano po? And we also have the communication. This is one of the very important purpose that the artist want to convey. His emotion and expression is sometimes he use his artworks just to give just to give the viewer an idea of what was the feeling of the artist during the time that he's making this kind of artwork. And we also have the lighting. So it's part of the relaxation. Sometimes there's a lot of artworks, even landscapes. So like for example, landscape. It give relaxation for the specific person or viewer um, to give herself a calming ambience, the serenity. Ano po? So like for example, Bagasbas Beach. Some of the Iteños or Camnorteños probably pumupunta or talagang pinupuntahan nila yun kasi may calming and may serenity sila natatanggap. So, it gives them a delighting concept or delighting experience because of this view, which is refers to the landscape artworks, which is a human, no, they are not human made. That is nature made, ano po? Naturally made, rather. And we also have the viewer, patron, or critic. So dito, they are the evaluators. So classification of the evaluators of the artwork. We have the elite or the patron. So they were not just the subject of the artworks during medieval or Byzantine time, but they are also the cause of the fall and rise of the artist. Kasi uh, kapag hindi ka nagustuhan ng isang elite person or ng ilang patrons or ng pharaoh or ng mga mataas na tao during that time, you don't have the right to become a popular artist. And when we say bystander, ordinary person, so these are the critics na kumbaga ordinary persons lang or yung tinatawag natin na um, even can create a meaning and abstract. When we say connoisseur naman, they are the evaluators, appreciators, and authenticators. So when we say connoisseur, they are the person who have the degree pagdating sa pagiging critics ng isang artwork. So let's say you are a graduate of the fine arts, something like that. Fellow artists. So sometimes a fellow who have a different style and preference may despite a fellow artist masterpiece and acclaim those who or she share commodities. So even your fellow artist can be part of your criticizers. And always remember that there is always two impression only pagdating sa pag-appreciate ng isang artwork or pag-impress or pag-give natin ng comments natin pagdating sa isang artwork. There are only two impression here. It's either we are going to appreciate the artworks because of its aesthetic value, or we are going to critique it according to its aesthetic value, or let's say according to the artist who made it, and let's say, or the medium and technique that the artist employed or convey of his artwork, something like that. So those are the things that should be remembered under the um, anatomy of an artwork. So another thing is the different factors that affect the artist and his works. So we have four category here, which is the style, the historical factors, the geographical factors, and the political, psychological, and sociological factors. So style it is the overall embodiment of the choice of the subject matter, treatment, and emphasis which appear again and again in the artworks of the artist or the particular epoch. It is a community or individual spirit in the series of the artwork. So all in all, when we say style, it involves also the medium, the technique, and the strategies uses by the artist in his works. So this is one of the factor that we should prioritize, ano po, or the artist always prioritizing in his artworks to avoid some unnecessary events, something like that, or unnecessary um, things na pwedeng makaabala or maging sagabal dun sa paggawa niya ng isang artwork. And also the historical factors. So this is a style of a particular period of time. An artist may choose to apply the ancient or classical touches in his artwork or may subscribe to the contemporary. So it will depends upon the artist is using the historical factors of the artist artwork rather. And we also have the geographical factors. Geographical factors, it is the artist is conditioned by their nationality, and so we have the categorization like Italian, American, Dutch, and Asian artwork. So it talks about the geographical location that also limits or extend the choice of the subject matter of the artist from the natural landscapes or even the flora and fauna and even the availability of the materials in his artworks that serve as a medium para mas magkaroon siya ng magandang artwork. And even political can be a factor. So the political belief of a specific artist is can affect rather can affect his artworks. And we also have the psychological factor. The psychological factor, sometimes this is one of the sometimes let me give you an example. Those suicidal persons. Sometimes, may mga suicidal person na bago sila nagsusuicide, they created specific artwork just to convey or give a message to their loved ones. Ano po, may mga ganun po tayong suicidal person na, and even the, not, even not suicidal, but in a specific artwork, sometimes you can see the psychological capacity of the artist. Ano po, that will, sometimes kasi pinapakita dito kung ano yung iniisip nila since that it involves our behavior, ano po, our emotions, our expressions. So, it can be a factor that can affect the artworks of the every artist. And we also have the sociological factor. Sa sociological factor, it talks about naman sa culture, sa beliefs, also the indigenous tribal communities, like for example, so what kind of artwork they are going to do, something like that. Okay, so those are the topics about the lesson 2 or the module 2 for our uh, subject art appreciation. So that would be all for this discussion in this video. If you have questions, you are free to PM me or message me, direct message or private message to clear some words or clarification about the topic that we have discussed. So thank you for listening and goodbye everyone. Goodbye po.